What does it really take to achieve the American dream? Are you ready to spend the countless hours and literally wait years to experience the benefits? Today on the Stories Behind the Door podcast, we have the president of Keep It Simple Storage and their One Lock storage system, Rob Kapp. So excited today to have somebody on the show who's got a super innovative product in the self-storage industry. We're developers and it's just hit us by storm. So looking forward to this. Before I hop in with Rob Kapp, I'm going to give a shout out to my friends, Kiwi 2, Wayne Woolsey and his crew, 30 plus years of building steel buildings, just incredibly reliable group and universally respected across the self-storage, now into the small bay flex industry as well. Thanks as always to Kiwi 2 for sponsoring the Stories Behind the Door podcast. Rob Kapp, really been excited to do this, and thank you so much for coming and joining us. And we're going to get into your lock that you've been working on for a while now. Before I do that, I always start the podcast the same way. Storage is such a niche industry, such a special industry, really, the people that are in it, but not one people usually set out at the beginning to find their career in. How did Rob Kapp get involved in self-storage?
Yeah, first, thanks for having me, and I apologize to all the viewers. Our first podcast, so maybe a little rusty, but yeah. So started back in 2001 as a side hustle. I was working for corporate America, and I was looking for a a retirement nest egg. So we jumped in the car and drove around and looked at laundry mats, car washes, and self storage. And like back in 2001, it's like, what is this thing? And did a little research and we're like, this is sort of crazy. So we went out, bought 10 acres, scraped it, put up a building, gravel around it and a fence, and rented them all up. And that was our start. And our rates were more per square foot back then. And it was $12 a square foot all in to build.
Wow. Yeah.
But site work and building land. So $12 a square foot plus land. So needless to say, profits were strong.
Yeah, you weren't paying $20 a square foot of buildable for the land, I'm guessing either.
No.
Yeah, I'm doing math in my head and I'm like, if we can get below $120, $130
Yeah,
a square foot today, we're happy. You're 1/10 of that. That tends to lead to some profit margin on the other end.
for sure. For sure. We could pay for a facility every 3 years.
I want to dig into this mentality because this piece of it always intrigues me. You know, that entrepreneurial journey. You're working a full-time job. You're in corporate America. What gives you that gumption to go out and because look, building a ground up self-storage development, while it's profitable on the back end when you do it right, it's not easy. That's a lot of work you're adding to your daily schedule. What gave Rob Kapp the desire and the will to go out and do this?
Yeah, not to work for corporate America, right? So, yeah, like a great point. So worked for 4 years without taking the distribution out of the company. So to your point, a lot of hard work and storage is it's all the food groups, but largely real estate. So, those returns on investment are deferred. So, a lot of discipline. And to be honest, as we grew the portfolio over about 17 years, we did not take a lot out. So it was a very long term, methodical journey to ultimately be able to leave corporate America.
I love this idea. One of my very early guests on the podcast, Mitch Feldman at the Feldman Group's a developer out of Miami, said, hey, real estate is a get rich slow game, right? Anybody that thinks they're going to come in and it's going to be instantly super profitable is not really aware of the reality of it. Talk to me about what it is about Rob Kapp and maybe someone, mentor, or your upbringing that gave you that discipline to stick with that process over, a long period of time.
Yeah, for sure. We'll go back to get rich quick and oh, people think storage. I remind folks, we bought four out of bankruptcy. So from very successful business minded folks, but got in. So yeah, so early on, the beginning story was I was a gentleman I worked with at General Electric. He said, "Hey, if you build a house yourself, the third one is paid for." So I started down that route of build the first one, sell it, build the second one, sell it, and the proceeds you can build a third one out of cash. And in 6 years of hard work, you can be mortgage free. So that's where I started. So I called a family friend of mine out in California, and I was like, "Hey, this goes back to the personality." I went to the bank and I did well, so I could get a loan, but they said they were going to charge me $50 for each draw when they came out to inspect the work, and that triggered my personality, and I refused to pay the $50. So I called a friend of mine that was, pretty financially sound. I was like, "Hey, I need 200 grand." He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to build a house." He goes, "What do you know about building houses?" I go, "I know nothing about building houses." But he goes, "Well, what's up?" And I was like, "Well, the bank wants $50 for a draw, and I don't want to pay that." Anyway, long story short, it was a terrible deal for him. He ultimately said no. He called me 2 years later and said, "Hey, how's that house?" And I'm like, "It's finished. It's a beautiful home." So he came to see it, and he shared later he was just horrified he didn't loan me the money, and I was like, "No, that's a terrible deal," you know. So and then he said, "Hey, let's go look for something else." And so he was largely the financial backer in it. He had been in several businesses himself. And that's our journey. That's where it started. But
So many questions when I listen to what you're saying, and listen, I've been an entrepreneur since 2001. I haven't had somebody else sign the front of my paycheck in a very, very long time, and always intrigued. What I'm hearing here is so cool. He said no, but you still got the house built. Talk to me about what you did after he said no, and how you managed to still get that project done.
I paid the $50, right? So I go back to the bank and got my loan and built the house. And so I built the house from 7 in the morning till 1:30, and then I worked second shift. So I did that for it took like probably like 12 months to build the house back in 2001. And when I say build it, we poured the footers, poured the concrete, framed it, did the electrical, did the plumbing. Probably the only things we didn't do is like sheetrock and roof.
Yep.
Um, so a lot of sweat equity that went into it. And when you're younger, you can do that. And then just luckily hit it right. I actually, as we were growing, talk about the hard work that goes into it. It was 5 years into the story's journey. I then sold everything I acquired to buy even more. So I had this brick 4,000 square foot house on 5 acres, sold everything but my dog and my tractor and doubled down again. And I went and lived in a 1 bedroom apartment to then buy more real estate. And honestly, I did that over and over until like, 2010 started to increase the quality of life. And then last 5 years, pretty dramatically increased my quality of life, but like not for 18 years. It took a lot of money out, and it's it's depends on when you meet me in my life of the view, right?
I'm so fascinated this, right? I think you divested of American Storage in 2020. You sold off that first portfolio, as my numbers right there.
Yes, yeah. So my partners and I divided the assets, and they took a share of them, and I took a share of them, and we just wanted to go in different directions, and that was one of the things. I was running the operation, just got super burned out because as we grew, we couldn't. We ran many different models, but there's just a fragmented process with not a lot of great technology to run the asset class. So out of sort of sheer desperation and burnout, so hey, we have to fix this in our industry or fix it according to us in our mind, because I had bought my way out of the frustration, right? Hired. and I think this is very true in across storage. I see it every day. I hired a COO or a general manager or whatever. Well, after I burn out my second one, I knew like you have to fix the problem, right? Because as time goes on, you're not as sharp in the operation, or it's gotten larger than you, and you're burning out key players. And I see many, many, many organizations burning out their executive team, and that's
Yeah.
really what led us to build the technology element. And we built it for our assets, and ran them incredibly well. um, One thing we're proud of, the last 2 years when times are tough, we're still in the low 90% occupancy, right? We're still driving revenue. Um, but it was all the technology. It was 100% of the technology.
Yeah.
And
So
yep, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say you've opened that door to the Kiss Lock. Keep It Simple Storage is the company, and the Kiss Lock that I first heard about you from. Talk to me about what it was operationally that kind of led you to want to develop this lock.
So, um, you know, through my operational journey, I honestly never acknowledged locks. It just, right? You did what you did, you put one on the floor, whatever you just did. Well, my maintenance guy went out of town for 2 weeks and I had to fill in for him. What was the nucleus? Well, two things was the nucleus. He went out of town and I had to drive out there and cut like 10 locks for lost keys and all this craziness. And like, I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. And then second, I had a younger guy come to work in our operation, and he said, "Well, what are we doing today?" I'm like, "Well, grab the grinder. We're going to cut locks for auction." And he was like horrified. He goes, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, no, just get the grinder. And he's like, sparks are flying everywhere. And he's like, he was in real estate. He went to business school for real estate. He's like, "This is absurd." And I'm like, that's just what we do. So, you know, looked to solve the problem, and I looked in our industry and nothing was there that was scalable, viable. You just trading one problem for another. And we were traveling about 4 years ago now in Africa. And I always joke, I say, I don't know if it was the bourbon or the malaria pills, but I said, man, I would be cool if there was like a smart lock with no batteries. And I started doing research and I realized for the last 11 years, every iPhone could transfer energy to an object. And then Android, many of them, and there's many phones out there, but I was like, what do you mean iPhone, you send power through the air to an object? So once I discovered that, came back to the US, and I'm also an investor in a incubator startup of these talented engineers. And I said, guys, I need you to build me this. And it was pretty black magic at the time. But anyway, it's sort of where it started. Skip ahead. We built four different products from this disc lock to a cylinder lock to the whole latch to even gate controllers, and they're all powered from your phone, and you can shoot power about that far away to just turn the motor to open the lock. Talk to the property management softwares. What's nice is it's NFC, so like Apple Pay, Google Pay, super stable, super light ecosystem. No Wi-Fi needed, no cellular service needed. So as long as you open the app when you had service, you can go in buildings, you can go 2 hours away, whatever. So the nucleus was, I discovered the right technology stack to build products off of to solve the issues in our operation. Um, and just that entrepreneurial side, we said, hey, let's go off and do this. So taught ourselves how to build products, taught ourselves how to write software, and we're really 70% software company, 30% hardware. Um, and then, I apologize for the last 3 years. Then we had to learn marketing because we definitely were not good at that. So we've had a cool product for a while, but we said we got to get better at the marketing side of it. So any of the audience that may have seen the marketing had dramatically changed over the last 6 months. But yeah, so skip ahead. I think in
I'm
the
excited
last,
to be a little
yeah,
bit of a small part of getting the word out on this lock because look, I've been on the other side of this. When we're designing a self storage product, you talked about building something in 2001 for $12 a square foot. Well, I could tell you if I'm using a lock that either is battery driven or I have to get electricity to every single door that I'm going to install that lock on in order to power the lock. And that's currently what was available on the market that I knew about, that marketing had gotten to my ear to this point. The expense of that in a ground up development is massive. And to be able to recoup that money from a customer, it's hard to, yes, technology plays and customers will pay me a little bit more money for the technology, the ease of use of the lock. But look, if my facility manager's got to be out there changing batteries every 6 months because a customer can't get into their unit, that's a massive problem on my side. So the ability that you've come up with to have a low cost alternative to be able to use technology for our customers, I get the benefit on the one side of a better customer experience. I don't have that massive increase in cost. What an amazing product for you guys to be able to bring to market. I feel
it's,
I
yeah,
feel like I want to be your marketing guy because this is like the easiest sale ever.
yeah, slam dunk. No, it's been fun. What I tell folks though is we invented a product that no one even knew they needed because
Yeah,
we're pretty old school as an industry, and we are changing, but it's a big ship to steer to say, hey, you actually smart locks, you've needed these for 20 years, you just didn't realize it.
yeah,
So it solved a lot of fragmented issues from how do you do unsecured empty vacant units? What do you do when someone moves in? You can't really do an online rental without it hitting a roadblock at the gate or door. Overlock them, unlock them, auction. One of the really slick things, all of our the auction winner just gets text the code. They can access a unit. And then off the back side, what we're excited 2026 is going to be a lot of data tool development. So we know where the customer lives. We know when they're going to their unit. Hey, they just had a rate increase. Send them a push text message. There is so much data, and especially on the security side. Immediately you see the bad actors because it was a whole eye-opening experience controlling someone at the gate versus controlling them at the door level. And what we realized was facilities are basically wide open. The gate stops very few people. Um, Skip ahead, and this will be maybe hard for US markets. I think in a lot of ways, European markets are ahead of us. Keypads are actually a huge problematic issue because, as I think Da Vinci put out a case study, 80% of gate codes are between the 1960 and 1980 numbers, right? So keep pushing numbers so the gate opens.
yeah,
Um, and we have operators in Europe pulling out all their keypads and putting in our one lock entry, which is the same tech, because they don't want a keypad.
right.
Now, I think the US where they'll go down kicking and screaming a little bit on the keypad, but that's where we are as an industry. As it evolves, it's like, hey, this is problematic, and but there again, until sort of Kiss came along, we we really didn't have a lot of innovation in our industry. And I was at a large owner council one time, and they had all the tech companies up there, and it was a bloodbath. It was horrifying, unprofessional, screaming. But one of the leaders of a tech company said, "Look, you guys are so backwards and do it so many different ways. And even if we spent the money to build the tech, you wouldn't buy it."
Yeah,
And it was so true, right? And
yeah,
as an operator, I was so frustrated with technology in our industry, but he was so right.
yeah,
Folks won't buy it, and it's um, our momentum on the Kiss and the selling the locks didn't come from pure logic. I'll be honest, a lot of it was outside pressure from maybe investors to run better, challenging the operational teams. Some herd mentality of, hey, you're getting left behind. So it's interesting. So, anyways, that's
I want to ask you, you obviously so uniquely positioned having spent as long in this industry as you have. Very slow to change, right? Like it doesn't adopt things quickly in any way, shape, or form. I guess my question to you is I'm going to ask you to put on your future seeing hat a little bit. In my perspective, I just got into self storage in 2021. It was still in 2021, the message I was sold coming into the industry was this is a mom and pop industry. The vast majority of stores are still small owners. They're still mom and pop type operations. Fast forward to 2025, the velocity of that changing, in my opinion, has been very, very quick, right? This is not a game for somebody to come in and try and identify a whole bunch of mom and pop owners anymore. You're competing with companies that have, you mentioned data, right? Extra Space got 4,000 stores worth of data, public even more than that. There's a question here, and the question is, are people going to get left behind if they don't get on this ship? If they're too slow to adapt to what's coming, is it going to be a situation where you're going to end up being pushed out of your asset?
yeah, I think absolutely, and I think we're already there. Like institutional money came in, we're all making institutional returns. Um, when we started 4 years ago, things were good, right? Coming out of COVID, now I'll get the timing off just a little bit. Coming out of COVID, and I knew we were doomed. I'm like, no, this is gonna be a crash landing. That's when everyone was riding high. We were investing all in technology, and then they're like, no, boohoo, we don't need that. We QR code on the window, get rid of the manager. Look, we're even smarter than we thought. And then the next year comes and it was bad. And then the next year, and
Mhm.
they had no tools in their tool belt, right? They had nothing. So yes, I alluded to some of our customers come to us sort of head in hand a little bit of shit that didn't work. So uh, a lot of large operators don't change, don't just right. It's funny, right? People just don't stand up and say, I want to change my whole operation. I want to take all the risk. I want to take all the responsibility. It's safer to just keep doing what we are doing. And we got away with that for 20 years because it's so the industry is so lucrative. So I tell people you could be a C student all day long in this industry and look genius. Whatever narrative you came up with, whatever whatever you said your technology was, is like, wow, this works. But that's changed, right? A couple years ago. And I don't believe it's ever
Yeah,
coming back. I think
yeah,
we're a 6 to 8, 10% margin industry.
yeah.
And and you have to change.
I think that, just adding color to what you're saying, that, we've built 95% of the square footage that existed in 2015 has been built in the last 10 years. And that stressed some of that, ease of the industry, right? You go back to 2001 to 2015, your point is very well taken. You could be a C operator and still make money. 2025, we're still seeing average rates across the country the same or lower than pre-COVID, and there was $4 trillion printed. So this what your summation is makes perfect sense to me. Like that you're no longer able to be an average operator and be able to scale a portfolio. I really don't think honestly you're going to be able to keep a smaller package, to your point earlier about buying sites that were in bankruptcy. Not everyone succeeds in their self-storage site. So love that way that you're thinking. The question I want to ask you coming out of what you said people are they don't want to change. Is it like fear of the change, or is it's a lot of freaking work to adopt a new system and to implement a new system, and you just don't want to do that work?
Um, Now I'll take a step back. So one great thing I get to do is take my operator hat off and I get to spend with operators from all over the world. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a sort of multi-answered question. I see I see some operation. The biggest problem is the individual operating it because they're scared of technology and they portray that outward. When I'm like, God, you're actually the problem. No, nothing else. Like, and I hate to say it, I'm like, you can barely use your phone, you can barely use your email.
Yep.
You're scared of yourself. Like, so
Yep.
that's one category. Um, Now we go over to Europe. So then, in the US, you go to trade shows and they sort of ask you a lot of gotcha questions like, well, what happened if this? What happened if their phone goes dead? I go, well, they're not calling you. And when they charge their phone, they can go in their unit. So I'm like, but the US, we get a lot of gotcha questions, a lot of
Yeah,
hesitation. We go to the Europe markets, zero, or 1%. And they're just like, but the European market is just evolving. Like it's where we were 20 years ago. And they're going gangbusters over there and they're starting new. So they're like,
yeah,
um, how do we put more efficient technology in place? Also in the US, what we see is, and you may agree with this, but like there's not a lot of extra people in storage operations, right? They're
yeah,
from the top down, they're running incredibly lean. And when I was an operator, I'm like, oh, that is great. I would love to adopt that new thing there. I didn't have any bandwidth. And I was one of the people, I just everyday fire drill, head down, doing whatever, spread way too thin. So you know, you have to, and we've been doing this long enough now. We'll really set people up for success, keep them between the guardrails, and we're like, we're not even going to engage in this relationship unless, you know, who's a point person, who's dedicated to do it, who's
yeah.
going to roll it out. And we see operators have different levels of success, or they want to try to roll it out their way, but um, we've got what, almost 30,000 locks out there, 100 different operators, tons of stores. I think we're in 7 countries now. And what's nice is we can use all that data to help guide you. And it's like, well, guys, thousands of these are open and closed today. So it's a mixed bag. Um, the first thing everyone that comes to us, they want to change they're like, oh, we love it. Now we're going to completely change it. I'm like, well, okay, but so it's been fun, and it. I will say all operators are great to work with. Some of the mom and pops honestly adopt us. It's really a mixed bag. I mean, we'll have someone 75 years old running a store and like out somewhere in this dirt road in Ohio say, hey, I need your locks. I have 50
Yeah.
units. Um, so
I'm going to just say, and I'm going to start wrapping up as we're getting close to the half hour mark. I always try and honor people's time and honor the audience's time so that they can digest what we talked about. I'm really excited having talked to you to see what's going to happen to this product. And quite frankly, you're going to have an ambassador in Thaddeus Campbell just because of your journey, just because of the way your head is wired and the work that you're willing to do. I go back to what you said before about building a house from 7:30 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon and then going to your full-time corporate gig. It kind of goes into the people that are going to adopt technology in their self-storage business. You've got to be willing to work extra, right? But the payoff is you survive in an industry that's, as you said, incredibly lucrative. And I think will continue to be incredibly lucrative for those people who are willing to do the short-term work that's going to ensure the long-term viability of their operations. Somebody wants to see a KISS lock, get a demonstration, communicate with you or your team. What's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you folks so they can get a demonstration and get a hands-on of what it is you guys are doing?
yeah, for sure. So I will leave with this one comment, and we'll get to that contact information. What I tell folks is it's not a change in technology. It's not what we're doing going to the moon. I go, it's simply a policy change. Just like when we started selling insurance or protection, or when we started, doing online auction, it's really a policy change, and it's a 30 to 60 day painful process. And it's just like any other change you did in your operation. After 60 days, it's just the new norm, settles down, and life goes on. So that's like the context I painted in. Anyway, contact information is keepitsimplestorage.com. You can jump on our website, look at our products, book a demo. The team would love to talk to you more. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Rob Kapp, it's, as I said, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and when I hear this story, and it's the same story for everyone I talk to that's at the pinnacle of success, it's hard work, and it's hard work over a prolonged period of time. A lot of people can work hard for a couple of months, but when you work hard for 25 years in a row, it's very hard not to see the results you're seeing. So kudos on what you built. Love the product, and been such a pleasure to get you to know you through the podcast. He's Rob Kapp. I'm Thaddeus Campbell. I'm going to try and give one more shout out to my friends at Kiwi 2 Construction. Wayne Woolsey and his crew at Kiwi 2 Construction. You can reach out to them at kiwiconstruction.com. As I mentioned earlier, over 30 years of putting together the steel structures on self-storage, a lot of small bay flex that they're doing as well. So if you're out there in the space, need some help, as Wayne says, he's a back of the napkin guy. The earlier you get him involved, the better information he can give you. So reach out to Kiwi Construction and support them. He's Rob Kapp. KeepItSimpleStorage.com, the Kiss Lock, incredible technology, incredible story. Can't thank you enough for joining the Stories Behind the Door podcast.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank everyone that joined.
Rob, appreciate it so much. Everybody, that's it for this week's episode. We will see you folks next week.